afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Chestnut Hill College and our Steinway Artist Series. This is our 10th year as an all-Steinway school. This designation means that all of our pianos are Steinway-made pianos. So here at the college, we have Boston upright pianos that are used in practice rooms and Steinway grands that are used for performances. And we're very proud of that. Since it's been 2 full years since our last concert, we're very happy, of course, to see you here again for this wonderful concert. As you know, we are welcoming back Steinway artist Richard Dowling. I have a few things that I'd like to mention about him that are not in your program. Growing up in Houston, and by the way, sorry about the loss, Rich, yesterday. Richard advanced very quickly in his music studies. As you saw, he holds degrees from both Yale and the University of Texas. He has concertized extensively throughout the United States and around the world. Among his many awards, he has received nationwide attention for recitals seen on PBS, Debut, and has been heard on NPR's Performance Today. His international performances have taken him through Europe, South America, Malaysia, Australia, and South Africa. Richard has performed critically acclaimed recitals at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, Singapore's Victoria Concert Hall, and the Istana Auditorium in Kuala Lumpur. Mr. Dowling has conducted guest master classes at the LaSalle SIA College of the Arts and Young Musicians Society in Singapore, and Hong Kong's Academy for the Performing Arts. Before we begin, I have several thank yous that I'd like to give to people who have been instrumental, literally, in today's performance. Our Office of Institutional Advancement with Erin Woolley and Mary Teresa Shevlin, CHC Marketing and Communications under the leadership of Chris Spangler and the assistance of Mary Lee Gallagher and Faith Kellermere, Technology with Mr. Don Vischer, Logistics with Phyllis Jablonski, and as always, the support of our college administration, Sister Carol Jean Vale, our president, Dr. Christopher Doherty, our vice president, and Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Dr. Mark Meacham. One last thing before we begin. If you haven't done so, would you please silence all of your devices? When the concert is over or at the intermission, please sign the email contact list out there if you wish to be alerted to future concerts, and also take a look at the CDs that Richard Dowling has produced and performs in. And now, friends of Chestnut Hill College and lovers of beautiful music, I present to you the incomparable Richard Dowling.
Thank you, Sister Kathleen. Can you just go on the road with me? Because that's a terrific introduction. And I never know how to answer the question, where are you from? I left Houston a long time ago. I've lived in New York City for 31 years. So I guess the Yankees is what I'm supposed to be rooting for. But everybody always has an affection for his or her hometown. The concert that I played here on February 23rd, 2020 was one of the very last concerts before the pandemic occurred. And musicians worldwide and actors, actresses, dancers, all kinds of performing artists have been out of work pretty much for 1.5 years. So I'm very grateful not only to have played that concert 2 years ago, but to have been asked back to play one of your very first concerts. I don't know if this is the first one, but it must be pretty close to one of the first. So I feel very honored to be back here playing for you again. It's nice to be back in the saddle and not just playing for a tiny little camera lens in my living room. I didn't mind. For the first time in my life as a pianist, I got to play my own instrument. I have a beautiful Steinway, very similar to this one, in my living room, what's left of my living room in New York, because it takes up a lot of my living room. So I had the privilege of getting to perform on my own piano. You know, when you're a violinist or a singer, cellist, flutist, you carry your own instrument around, so you know exactly how it's going to play. When you're a concert pianist, any kind of pianist, every piano is like a blind date. So we are recording today. We've got wonderful Don Vischer back there, as I said 2 years ago, on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, running the controls. He's responsible for setting all of this up. You've got wonderful monitors here. Let's see, what can you see? My legs right now. So in this case, I do like playing for a camera. But one of the things that was very difficult about playing virtual concerts from home wasn't the performance, it was after the performance. You go to all this effort to play something either beautifully or brilliantly, and there's no applause. And you have to turn from the piano and look at the camera and say, "Wasn't that great?" You know? So that's my cue to you. You have to applaud today, okay? Anyway, thank you, Don, for making me look good, and thank you for coming to the concert today. I'd like to start. You've got programs, so I won't bore you with details of my life. If you get warm, you can use it. If you're in heat distress, that's what programs are for. I'm going to start with what I consider to be a little prayer of thanks, a beautiful work by Johann Sebastian Bach that has been transcribed in a beautiful romantic piano transcription called "Sheep May Safely Graze." Next up, a beautiful Schubert Impromptu. This is Opus 90, number 3 in G-flat major. If you're a musician and you see the key signature of G-flat major in the title of a piece, that strikes terror into your heart. The ones that are laughing know what I mean. 6 flats. The black keys on the piano are the sharps and the flats. Well, the more of those we have on the music, the tougher it is to read. That's why these are also known as accidentals. But, in this time of, sort of alternate reality, fake news, I've decided that if I make mistakes and I fall off the black keys, that we are now going to call them digital indiscretions. That's what they're called from now on. Now, ironically, playing on the black keys is actually easier than playing on the white keys because they stick up off the plane of the white keys and you can feel them. In fact, the great American composer Irving Berlin, composer of endless Broadway shows, lived a very long life. Did you know he could only play on the black keys? So when singers would come to his apartment in New York and want to try out a new song, they'd say, "Oh, well, Mr. Berlin, that's too high or too low. I can't sing it in G-flat." So he had a specially designed upright piano where you could take these blocks off and you could move the keyboard up or down about 3 notches either direction. I guess if they wanted 4 notches, they didn't get the job. Anyway, this is a beautiful piece by Franz Schubert, very much like the Bach. I put the slow stuff at the beginning while you're still awake, and we get the serious stuff out of the way while you're still alert. Thank you. And now a little group of Chopin. And I'm going to just review the program real quick to make sure I put it in the right order. I haven't done this for 2 years. And I sent Sister Kathleen the program. Oh, yeah, that's right. Next is the Grand Valse Brillante. That's what I thought. But I wouldn't have bet that on Jeopardy. All right. I think I've got it now. Thank you. That's the first time I've ever done that in my life. You'd think after all these years I'd be able to remember what I'm going to play. But we're very blessed as pianists. We have the largest repertoire of any solo instrument. If you consider the symphony orchestra to be a solo instrument, it has more pieces written for it. But as a single solo instrument, the piano has the biggest repertoire. Nearly every major composer, with the exception of some of the big opera composers, wrote for the piano. So you can spend your entire life and never get through maybe 20% of everything that's been composed for this instrument. All right, so here's a wonderful group of Chopin. I'll just play them straight through. You can applaud if you like. First, the Grand Valse Brillante. As the title suggests, it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be lots of fun. These are early works of Chopin taken from a program I played a few years ago called the Teenage Chopin. Teenage or thereabouts. He wrote a lot of wonderful works in his teen years and early 20s. This Grand Valse Brillante, I think, is from about age 21. It's an opus 18. And when you're a young person, of course, one of the things you like to do is try to impress adults and impress your peers. And pianists usually like to play fast and loud. I used to get accused in piano competitions on my critique sheets of too much, quote, youthful exuberance. That means rushing and playing too fast. I've calmed down a bit now, but I can still get carried away. So in this first piece, you can imagine a youthful Frédéric Chopin trying to impress the aristocrats in the salons of Paris and Vienna with his technical prowess at the piano. So that's the first piece. The second one is one everyone knows, the Fantasy Impromptu. It has the gorgeous middle section with a beautiful theme that was made into a pop tune here in the United States in the 1910s called I'm Always Chasing Rainbows. Then next, a beautiful nocturne, I think from about age 17 or 18, that he wrote for his sister. This piece was made famous in the, I think, 2000 or 2001 movie The Pianist with Academy Award winner Adrian Brody. And that was the theme of that movie, is this particular nocturne. And then finally, a piece for piano and cello, the Introduction and Polonaise Brillante, another youthful, brilliant piece. Now, you might notice that I've failed to bring my cellist with me today. I've played this piece with cellists for the last 25 years. And every time a cellist says, hey, let's put a program together, what do you think about the Chopin Polonaise Brillante? And I think, oh God, now I got to practice. Because the cello is really good at going da, 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 but it's not really great at playing fast. Composers know that the cello shines when it has beautiful long melodies like singers. And so the pianist usually has to do all the catching up, all the fast stuff. Well, Chopin was a great pianist, but he was not a cellist. So he did exactly that. He kept all the runs in the piano part, and the cello gets all the melodies. Well, I was tired of that. So I decided to amortize my investment a few years ago, and I took the cello part and I just crushed it into the piano accompaniment. And so now I can play this piece anytime I want. You know? With that, I don't have to have a cello. So if there are any wrong notes in this piece, it doesn't matter, because Frédéric didn't write it this way. I did. Now, actually, I'm just building upon an arrangement that I found by Carl Czerny. Czerny and Hannon, if you ever took piano lessons, are the two books of exercises that every pianist is tortured by. And so Mr. Czerny actually wrote a lot of fine pieces, and he loved this piece, so he was the first one to have the idea to make it a solo work. I found his arrangement, I didn't like it very much. I figured since it's just a transcription, I could do what I want to it. So it's by Carl and Richard, with a lot of Fred.
Welcome back, everyone. Some of you may not be aware that this year we are honoring, very especially, Sister Carol Jean Vale, our president, as she retires in June from 30 years of resilient and selfless commitment to Chestnut Hill College. Sister Carol, your continued support and appreciation of the music department through the years has always been very evident. What better way is there to express our gratitude, my gratitude, than through the precious gift of music? And so, knowing that the Tchaikovsky First Concerto holds a special place in your heart, Richard Dowling has graciously accepted to play the main theme in your honor this afternoon.
This is for you, Sister Carol. For those who don't know what a piano concerto is, it's a work for piano with symphony orchestra accompaniment. And like the cello, you may see that I have failed to bring my symphony orchestra with me today. And this piece has 3 big movements. It lasts over a half an hour. I'm just going to play the theme of the first movement in an arrangement by a great Australian-American pianist, Percy Granger, that I found on the internet. And like that Chopin introduction in Polonaise Brillante, it sort of smashes the piano and the orchestra together all in one. So it's big and brash and bold. So I'm trying to be a conductor and a piano player at the same time, okay? So cut me a little slack. I play Piano Concerto Number 3 by Tchaikovsky, but I never learned that one. So I learned it in about a week. Thank goodness for iPads, huh? I had to have 3 page turners turning all those. Now, how did I turn the pages? Everybody always wants to know. I've got them taped to the floor down here, my AirTurn Bluetooth pedals. That's what we piano accompanists use when we accompany singers and cellists and violinists now. People always want to know, I never saw you turn pages. How did you do that? I thought, well, fancy footwork. We've got 3 pedals on the piano. We've got the damper pedal on the right, which raises and lowers the dampers, which allows the notes to ring. We have the sostenuto in the middle, which is usually broken. And then it's not used very much. And then the one on the left is the soft pedal, which reduces the volume. Now I've got 2 more pedals, one that turns front ways and one that turns backwards on the music. Now I've got 5 to take care of. And I tell you what, you can teach an old dog new tricks. But it took about 6 months for me to get used to that thing a few years ago. But now I'm a convert. I used to have to carry around literally a pile this big of music, of all my own solo music that I was working on, plus anybody that I was planning to accompany soon in a voice recital or a string recital. It was a lot to carry around in a bag through the airport. Sometimes I'd have to take just another extra rolling cart full of music and check that. Now I've got it all in my iPad, my whole library. So sometimes technology is pretty wonderful. All right, now on with the show. You know from last time I was here that I have sort of 2 lives, one foot, or one hand, I guess, in the classical world and another in the ragtime and early jazz world. I've always loved music from about 1890 to 1930, because when I grew up in Houston, we were a 3-piano household. Some households have 3 cars. We had 3 pianos. We had my aunt's old upright that I started lessons on, and then once I had graduated and proved that I was going to be a serious piano student, my parents bought me a used Baldwin Baby Grand, and I put about 550,000 miles on that piano. It was a wreck when we bought it, and it was a wreck when we finished with it. But it stood me in good stead. And then we had a 3rd piano, an upright pump Aeolian player piano. And I had hundreds of rolls. I still have that piano. And so I got to hear that music live, music from the turn of the century live, watching the keys go down. Now, yes, it's a recording, but the piano plays live for you. It's not like a record. It's like someone were sitting there playing in front of you like a ghost. Now, albeit they played the same way every time you put the roll on, but that's good because you can, when you're a student, you can slow the roll down, and I can really watch the keys and listen and copy. So I would often get my mother or my sister, when she would be cooperative, to put a tune on the player piano, and then I would sit next to it at the other piano and try to mimic it. And so that's why I fell in love with this music, because I had heard it since I was a little boy. Now, George Gershwin, probably at the top of the list of any early jazz music lovers' favorite composers. And unfortunately for us pianists, despite the fact he was a virtuoso pianist, he didn't compose a lot of music for solo piano. Why? Because there wasn't any money in writing solo piano pieces. There have never been enough really good pianists on the planet to be able to play, say, Rachmaninoff's second sonata. It's not a big sheet music seller. So Gershwin knew this, of course, having grown up taking lessons. He knew the money was in writing Broadway shows, and he wrote wonderful tunes. He did finally get around to deciding to write a group of preludes modeled after those of Frédéric Chopin, not in style, but in format. Chopin wrote a group of 28 preludes. That's Opus 28, 24 preludes, one in every major and minor key. And so that was Gershwin's inspiration. He thought he'd write one just like Chopin did. There's just short little works. Well, he wrote 6, maybe 7 of them, and then ran out of time before a concert where he was going to debut them. So he performed those 6 preludes and then ultimately decided to only publish 3 of them. So every piano student plays the 3 Gershwin preludes. But I'm going to play all 6 of them. Now, we don't know really what the order is that he performed them. He performed them in 1926, accompanying a singer in 2 recitals, one in New York at the Roosevelt Hotel and another one in Boston a few days either before or after, and then published the 3 preludes that we know as numbers 1, 2, and 3. But we do know from later musicological digging that the other 3 are in your program. You see Sleepless Night, Novelette in Fourths, which is a piece of ragtime, and then finally the Rubato Prelude. It doesn't really have a title. Rubato is just the tempo marking. And those are among the ones that he performed. So anyway, well, I don't know what the order is. This is the order that I like to play them in. I've played them my whole life. They're just short, as he described them, charming vignettes of New York life in the 1920s. As you can see in your program, Gershwin gave a couple of those little nicknames. The Novelette in Fourths was never published as a piece of sheet music. It only exists as a player piano roll. And I borrowed that roll. It's a very rare roll. I borrowed it from a collector friend. Gershwin sat down in 1919. His birthday is the end of September 1898. So he would have been 21, 22 years old, depending on when it was recorded at the Velta-Mignon Player Piano Company, I think probably in suburban New Jersey, across the river. He would go on Sunday afternoons and record player piano rolls, primarily for Aeolian, some for Ampico, and a few for Velta-Mignon. It was the really expensive model. And so I borrowed that roll and put it on and wrote down all the notes so that I could learn this piece. Now, it has been published later from his manuscript at the Library of Congress, but it's missing the trio section, which I discovered in that player piano roll. So I'm the only person that plays it all the way through. Now, Gershwin just recorded it that particular day, but, imagine if we had a recording of Beethoven playing. Do you think everybody would try to emulate that recording exactly? Of course they would, because it would be authentic. But guess what? Even composers are human beings, and I bet you that Gershwin and Beethoven didn't play their pieces the same way every day. So that allows the rest of us mere mortals to take a few liberties with the score every once in a while and get away with it. So that Novelette in Fourths is a really unusual piece. The number 2 and number 3 prelude, as published, have the nicknames Blue Lullaby and Spanish Prelude. Those come from Gershwin describing them verbally on a radio program where he played the 3 preludes. He said the number 2 is sort of a blue lullaby, and he called the 3rd one his Spanish Prelude. There's nothing particularly Spanish about it. Sounds like it's got a Cuban rhythm to me. In any case, this leads us into the next 2 works, a little Latino duo. The first is a beautiful intermezzo by the Mexican composer Manuel Ponce. This 2-page piece is so charming and romantic from 1909. Now, I think that Mr. Ponce got gypped out of royalties because in the early 70s, there was a wonderful movie called Love Story. And the composer of the music for that film was a French composer, Francis Lai, or Lai. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, L-A-I. And he wrote this tune. Everybody knows that tune, except anybody under 30, probably. Well, when you hear this intermezzo by Manuel Ponce, you're going to think, that's theme from Love Story. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to sue Francis Lay. And then to follow that, the very famous perennial Malagueña by Ernesto Lecuona, the great Cuban composer pianist. It was a piece I learned probably when I was about 12. Every budding piano virtuoso student wants to play Malagueña, and my teacher relented. During COVID, I had 2 years to dig through old repertoire and investigate new things. It was like being back in music school again. I had hours and hours to practice and hours to goof off. And so I dug out Malagueña, and I thought, that's such a terrific piece. Audiences love it. How come I haven't played this in several decades? But I can say I play it a lot better now than I did when I was 12. I've put a built-in encore into the program so you wouldn't leave. No pianist ever finishes a program with Für Elise. Für Elise, one of Beethoven's most recognizable pieces, but most hackneyed as well. So why would I put this at the end of a program? Any classical music aficionados, especially classical piano aficionados in the audience, are probably on the verge of having to jump in an ambulance right now. I can't believe he's going to play Für Elise at the end of his program. Well, as you can see, little Ludwig was born in 1770. So 2020 was supposed to be our big 250th birthday celebration worldwide. Every pianist on the planet, every violinist, every cellist, and every symphony orchestra was primed to do all Beethoven all year. Well, that was canceled, and then 2021 was canceled as well. And then 2022, well, it sort of started out as 2020 TOO. But things are getting better. So I hereby proclaim that 2022 can be a Beethoven do-over year, because we can never get enough Beethoven in our lives. There's a wonderful poster in one of the music offices in the back where I was waiting to go on, and it says, Bach gave us the word of God, Mozart gave us God's laughter, and Beethoven gave us God's fire. I couldn't agree more. I wish I had said that. So, I'm going to play Für Elise since I've heard so many people tell me in my life, that's my favorite song. Well, of course, there are no words. It's supposed to be your favorite piece, but that's okay. You can call it a song if you want. People love Für Elise. Every piano student has to learn at least the first page, but I'm going to play it exactly how Beethoven wrote it, and then just before the end, I'm going to rag it. I'm going to add stride, ragtime, and a little boogie-woogie to it to show you what great music is capable of.
think your applause and the standing ovation say it all. And I think it's a wonderful way to spend an afternoon when as we deal with the other things that are happening in our world. You are the Steinway artist extraordinaire.